Besides working with trauma, faster than normal breathing can help people recalibrate their body and mind, increasing their self-confidence, their energy levels, and opening to new growth potential. Recent research in neurophysiology gives us more insight into how this actually works. There was a researcher named Stephen Porges who created the Poly-Vagal Theory. Poly-Vagal means there are three branches of the vagus nerve in the body. The bottom two diagrams on this graphic show where the vagus nerve goes in the body. 80% of the messages to the brain and the body are directed by the vagus nerve. The newest evolutionary part of the vagal nerve is called the social engagement system. This developed when mammals became prominent on the planet. It's the mammalian parasympathetic system that goes to the face, the heart, and the lungs, and to literally convey to others that we're safe to come close to. So this newest circuitry that mammals have allows us, because we are mammals, allows us to smile, to talk in a calm voice, to breathe easily, and that conveys a sense of safety and inhibits some of the old fight-flight circuitry in our body. The second branch of the vagus nerve is the sympathetic or mobilization circuit of fight and flight. This activates our system when there's danger. It alerts the body to handle threat. When this is activated, it cuts off the circuitry to the prefrontal cortex, the social engagement system, so we don't think about the trauma that's coming. We immediately use our energy to flee or to fight. When this system is activated continuously, it puts us in a hypervigilance, and we can never relax fully. We're always on the lookout for what danger may be in our environment. Animals can, when the danger is past, often deactivate the sympathetic nervous system. They literally shake their body and recalibrate. But humans often hang on to that state of hypervigilance, and it chronically goes on in their life. Now, the third branch of the vagus nerve is the oldest, and this is called the immobilization circuit. This system comes into play when the nervous system has no escape. It can't flee, it can't fight, so it freezes. An animal, for example, that is trying to flee from a lion, but gets trapped, and it can't escape and it can't fight, will literally freeze. And sometimes when it freezes, it saves itself because predators go after something that's moving. And if the predator thinks, well, it's dead now, and I don't have to kill it anymore, it will move on. And so sometimes freezing becomes a way to save the life. So as breath workers, we use the knowledge of this. First of all, using the social engagement system, when we have a client, we talk in a prosodic voice. We have a smiling, receptive face and an open body posture. We have slow, sensitive pacing. We're not hurrying and creating distress. We are demonstrating a calm breathing and rapport through this social engagement system. We teach our clients slower than normal breathing techniques, which helps bring them into present awareness and avoid panic or shutdown states. We also then teach them the faster than normal breathing, which helps reprogram the triggers to the mobilization circuit. This helps them self-regulate and grow in confidence that they can take care of themselves. They're not being controlled by their trauma. As long as we can keep the social engagement system, in other words, the breathing, the prosodic, slow pacing, as long as we can keep that going, the two older systems, the freeze system and the fight-flight system, are in balance. To put this very simply, there are three major functions in helping to de-escalate traumatic responses. The first part of the brain is what Bessel van der Kolk, who's an eminent researcher on trauma, he calls it the smoke detector. It's the amygdala. He calls the amygdala the smoke detector because when stimuli come into our nervous system, that's the first place it goes, is to the amygdala. And if it becomes hyper aroused, that means that there's danger. Yes, so Jim. Stimulus goes from the amygdala to the thalamus. And the thalamus is called the cook. It's the chef, because it sorts out what are really dangerous versus maybe not so dangerous or pretty normal. It sorts them out. And then we'll tell whether we're going to shut down the prefrontal cortex or we're going to leave it open to have a plan of dealing with whatever is happening. If the thalamus says that this is overwhelming danger that needs immediate response, it sends the message to the hippocampus, which cuts off the workings of the prefrontal cortex and puts us into emergency reaction. The watchtower is the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. And this is what operates most of our time to regulate with reason and emotion our self-care. Bessel van der Kolk recommends as an adjunct to healing of trauma using movement things like dance and yoga and qigong. What many of the eminent researchers do not yet fully recognize, because they haven't experienced it, is that faster than normal breathing is one of the greatest aids in deprogramming the traumatic response. Again, I'm going to review this now with everyone. In trauma, the hippocampus in the midbrain is flooded with the stress hormone cortisol and or adrenaline. And it stops its integrative functioning by either bypassing, that is, dividing attention away from hurtful stimuli to something more neutral, or, as we said, actually cutting off the pathways to the prefrontal cortex. Now, the hippocampus needs focused attention in order to help come back to integrating its sensations. And this is something that we use in breath work. When people are able to focus their attention on their breath, rather than just getting overwhelmed with traumatic stimuli, they're able to come back to self-regulation. In therapeutic breathwork, we activate those parts of the brain that have been overwhelmed very cautiously and just to the right proportions, so that we can go into the parts of the brain, which is the right brain, where the trauma has occurred and has been stored, and rewrite that programming. Because when the prefrontal cortex has been deactivated, we have no memory. We have no memory of what happened. That memory goes into the right brain, which is called implicit only memory. And when things are in the right brain and they're reactivated, for example, a person who was abused by someone who had a mustache, and now they're all of a sudden, when they're around people with a mustache, they feel very afraid, but they don't know why, because it's in the right brain. They don't have a memory of it, a specific memory. And just as happened today, as reported with the little exercise that you did, memories can come back from old traumas that now, in a safe setting, can be breathed through and integrated. For example, is a soldier who had been traumatized in war, and now a truck backfires on the street and they dive under cover. A truck is backfiring, but they are hearing bullets flying over their head, and they react in a way that looks crazy to other people. This is an obvious example, but we have many of these examples in our lives of where we have reactions to things and we don't know why we're reacting in the way we do. And it doesn't necessarily have to come from war. It could come from an accident we had, or it could come from corporal punishment as a child, or it could come from a sense of abandonment in our family. So therapeutic breathwork mildly activates this midbrain and the sympathetic nervous system through increasing our breath volume. But it does it in a safe setting to help reprogram what has been frozen in the fight-flight mechanism. As such, fears arise and are breathed through, thereby recovering the energy that was thwarted by trauma and unavailable for more creative endeavors in our life. So this breathing helps the unintegrated or only partially integrated stimuli to resurface and be more fully integrated with safe outcomes. And this is assisted by the safe observer or breath worker, and helps the client make sense of their reactivity and come to a greater sense of safety in their world. And as breath workers, we help reinforce this sense of safety in the mind by using affirmations or inner child visualization. So it helps put those original fears in a more workable context to be understood, and the energy of the fear be integrated into more conscious use. So pathways that have been cut off to the prefrontal cortex are now activated in resourceful ways, and the person makes sense to themselves and can make productive choices based on their present needs rather than operating in the trance state of past trauma.